Hey everybody, this is Will Ashton, your usual co-host for Cinemaholics. I am doing my own little recording here because apparently we're now doing these things called Instant Takes, which John started, and I found out about those, I believe, around the same time you guys did, because he just kind of dropped that to me in a message when the first one went live, which I believe was for Beetlejuice. So on Saturday, I had a chance to see Transformers 1, which is the new animated film from Josh Cooley. Josh Cooley, you probably know best from his work with Pixar films, particularly as a director of Toy Story 4. So I guess it makes sense in a relative sort of way that he was asked to partake in this Hasbro production. Obviously, they make movies about toy properties, and they saw that he did a good sequel to a toy-based franchise, and we're like, hey, maybe he can do a Transformers film for us, because this is the first, I believe, solely animated Transformers film, at least as far as the theatrical release goes, since the original Transformers, a movie that came out back in the 80s, which is probably best known for being the last film to feature the talent of Orson Welles, or at least that's how I know it best. It's not a film I particularly enjoy a lot, and I feel like I should probably start this off by noting that I've never really been that crazy about the Transformers property. I didn't grow up with it. I thought even as a kid, it was just kind of weird and silly. Maybe that's a discredit to my limited imagination or what have you, but I always thought this property was just, I don't know, a little goofy for my taste. I didn't really connect with this franchise about aliens that are cars and trucks that transforms into, these, humanoid punching machines. It just, I don't know, it didn't really seem like my thing. But, I could see it was you watch the box office for these things over the years, and you see all the Michael Bay movies, and, you see Paramount trying to revitalize this franchise over and over again to, various results, at least in terms of financial success. We had Bumblebee and whatever the one that came out a year or so ago was. I am totally forgetting the name of it. I know that Anthony Ramos was in it, but that was another attempt to kind of capitalize on the inherent box office potential of these films. Rise of the Beast, that's what it was. It came out last year. As you can note, it didn't really leave a big impact for me. But, I went into this one more optimistic. I mean, not only because of the talent involved, which also includes a voice cast, which is pretty stacked. You got Chris Hemsworth, you got Brian Tyree Henry, you got Scarlett Johansson, you got Steve Buscemi, you got Lawrence Fishburne, you got John Hamm. Be sure to listen to the Mad Men, wherever you get your podcast. And you got Keegan-Michael Key. And, I want to go into this, assuming the best, because, I try not to have early reactions cloud my view of things, but I saw, the writing was on the wall and that this was getting good notices, and people were saying, this was a Transformers movie they've been wanting since they were a kid. It's the film that really respects the Transformers, and it takes out all those crummy humans, which, I think that was kind of the thing that dragged down a lot of the live action movies, that the inherent limitations of, doing a live action version of Transformers, that you have to have live action things such as humans in those. And so, when you have an anime film such as this one, you can just focus on the Transformers themselves. And for as much as I want to give this movie credit for, trying to appeal more to the benefits, I guess, of this franchise, or trying to latch on to what people really liked about the original cartoon series and the original Hasbro toy line, I think it's just not that particularly great. And I guess it comes down to me for being a script that just, I don't know how to say this in a way that doesn't seem mean or condescending, but it felt like I was watching basically like a Cartoon Network pilot in feature form. You remember when they did that Clone Wars movie back in 2008? And it just kind of felt like you're watching what was essentially a build up to a cartoon show that for someone like me, you weren't really planning to watch. So you just kind of felt like you're just sitting there watching a pilot for a show you're never going to watch. That's how I felt watching Transformers 1. It has a lot of setup. You see the origins of Optimus Prime and Megatron before they even had those titles. I'm going to look up what they call themselves in this movie. It was Orion, Pax, and D16. this is actually before they can actually transform into the Transformers that we know them to be. They're just these sort of like scrappy miners, and that is like, actual coal mine, but they're also young. So the movie has a lot of fun kind of playing with that, play on words. But yeah, I mean, you just kind of watch as these characters come into their own and define themselves for who we know them to be. They have this falling out where as strong as they get physically, their emotional bond breaks. And I can see the inherent appeal of that, but I think the storyline is inherently so busy to the point where, even though it is a really kind of simplistic story as root, it feels like it's trying to set up too much at once. Like I could see if this was trying to be a season of television and you're getting, this whole story and you're getting to know these characters really well and all that. But I don't know, I guess just because it is confined to 100 something, less than 2 hour film, I never really felt the organic pull of this friendship. Like it just felt very performative to me. The script, which is written by Eric Pearson, Andrew Baer, and Gabriel Ferrari, it feels like it's really going through the motions as far as establishing the bond and then the later fallout of these characters. Everything feels telegraphed to the point where it doesn't really feel explained to me. It doesn't really feel like anything about their friendship is really won over. And that's something when you watch, like even something like Toy Story 4, and you see there's a lot of showing as opposed to telling. Granted, that movie has the benefit of having a long-standing relationship with these characters and the bond that comes from those characters having their push and pulls is established over multiple decades and 3 different films that came about. So I can cut this one a little bit of slack in that respect, but it does kind of feel like, for as busy as this movie gets with like establishing all the new characters and all the different versions of characters that we know before. For instance, as I mentioned, Keegan-Michael Key is in the film, and he is B127, which is basically Bumblebee. And they have a lot of fun playing with the idea of, like, if you watch the live action movies, including the Travis Knight film, Bumblebee is this sort of silent figure in a sense of, like, he doesn't have his actual voice, but he can like tune into different things with his radio box and, speak through songs and all this stuff. And in this movie, he's like the opposite. He's like this chatterbox that can't shut up, and he's supposed to be sort of the comedic relief of the film and all this stuff. But yeah, I don't know. Everything about the comedy as well was just very telegraphed to me. It's a lot of the type of jokes where it's just like a character is setting things up and it's like, oh no, there is absolutely no way I am going to, and then it smash cuts and it's that thing that they said they weren't going to do. It's like that kind of style of comedy over and over and over and over again. And yeah, I don't know, it just, for as much as I can value that this movie is a lot more thoughtful, is a lot more, interested in establishing these characters as characters and not just as big punchy robots that punchy punch, it just still doesn't feel very organic to me. It still feels like it's trying to do too little and too much at the same time. And that's not to say anything about the performances as well. I mean, I was a little thrown off when it was announced that Chris Hemsworth was going to be Optimus Prime, because like that character has such a definitive voice from such a definitive voice actor. I'm like, I don't know, Chris Hemsworth, like, I mean, he was good in Furiosa this year, but it's like, can he pull that off? And I think he pulls up better than I expected. I don't think he's quite Optimus Prime to me, but also that's kind of the point. This isn't supposed to be, the true Optimus Prime yet, so I'll cut a little slack. But, Byron Tyree Henry gets kind of more of the emotional gravitas, such as it is, of this film, and I think he holds it well. Lawrence Fishburne is really solid. They get a lot of fun. There's a sort of Deus Ex Machina sort of thing with Matrix, and they have a lot of fun having Lawrence Fishburne say Matrix over and over again. So, for the adults, I guess that's something they can enjoy to various extents. Steve Buscemi never gives a bad performance, and John Hamm plays a character of sort of duplicitous means, and it's fun to see him kind of adopting more of a villain arc. I haven't had a chance to watch his season of Fargo yet, but Mike Overhost, fellow co-host of Mad Men, is telling me that that's like one of his best performances, right up there with Don Draper. And it seems like, he's trying to reinvent himself in fun ways and go against, what we see him as, even though obviously anyone that watches Mad Men knows that Don Draper is not a good person in a black and white sense. But nevertheless, I don't mean to get off topic or talk about Mad Men, but all that is to say, because this is just I believe, just sort of a rambling sort of avenue to just kind of talk about general thoughts. And I'm very curious if John's going to see this, if he's going to agree or disagree with me on this. But, I can appreciate the animation. I can appreciate the desire to, hone in on these characters and do something that feels, a little bit more true to like what the original cartoon show was and what people initially latched onto. I still think I don't know. I can see these positive reactions. I just kind of wonder if people are cutting it some slack. That's kind of the same thing that I think happened with Bumblebee. I'm not trying to be a hater here or anything, but you see that movie and like it is just kind of like basically an ET knockoff, and people I think just kind of liked it because it's not as busy and not as frantic as the Michael Bay movies, and so they're just kind of like, yes, we want this, this is what we like, and I think there's just this desire at this point for, I think, a lot of fans to just want a good Transformers movie. And I guess in that respect, this is closer to that than not, just in the sense that this is closer to being what I think people want from a Transformers movie than what we've gotten from something like Age of Extinction or whatever the later Transformers sequels were. Although I feel like, I don't know, Dark of the Moon I remember being kind of fun. I think that's probably the best of the original ones. But even think back to like that first Transformers movie that Michael Bay did. That's also kind of like, E.T. send up as well. I mean, they're all kind of aping off of the Spielberg style when they try to do these things in some respects. And Spielberg, I believe, is an executive producer on most, if not all, of the Transformers movies. So maybe those dues are being paid in reverence. But nevertheless, I don't know. I'm just not there with the Transformers franchise. I'm not, like I said, trying to be a hater. I'm not trying to be a meanie. I just can't really get into this. I was pretty bored watching this movie. I didn't find it very funny. I didn't find the story that emotionally investing. Even the animation style, which, I mean, it's refreshing to see, a fully animated Transformers movie again, and with, modern CG animation, but even the action scenes in those, which I thought would be a lot cleaner, a lot more concise, considering that the Michael Bay movies, I think a big issue with those action scenes that they're always so frantic and busy that it's like kind of hard to make out when these mechanical machines punch each other in random metropolis cities, what's even going on. And I was hoping that the animation and the action would be a lot more concise in this, and comparatively it is, but it still feels kind of just overly busy and overly frantic. So I don't know, maybe there's just nothing about this franchise that's inherently a Will Ashton thing. I don't know. I'm always open to be surprised, and I don't know, maybe if they make Transformers 2 a sequel to this, maybe that'll be the one that really wins me over. But unfortunately, I'm going to have to be in dissenting opinion on this one. I didn't really find it that fun or interesting, and I'm glad other people are getting what they wanted out of it, but unfortunately, that wasn't for me. So that was my instant take on Transformers 1. I hope I did a good job. I hope I made my points clear and concise as possible in this rambling sort of early reaction. And yeah, if you saw the film, feel free to reach out to me or John, and maybe we'll have your opinion on the show. I don't know, maybe I still don't know if John's seeing this movie or not, so we'll have to kind of play it by ear. But for the meantime, that's all I have to say. Bye-bye.